Alright, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me once again, and welcome back to the battle for Wesnoth. A game that I have not done much with for a little while. I still love this game. I've played this game a great deal. Today we're looking at a replay, and this replay was provided by Hardwood, a supporter of mine on Patreon. So thank you, Hardwood, who asked me if I was going to do some more, could do some more Battle for Wesnoth stuff for him, and I said, yes, sounds good. So this is a replay from the ladder. Krogen versus ForPeace. So we have Krogen down here playing the Undead, and if we look at the full map, we can see up here ForPeace is a white mage playing the Loyalists. I actually don't remember what the name of this map is. Sulla's Ruins. Okay, fair enough. I don't think I've played a whole lot on this map. We've got some statues scattered around. Looking at it, there's a whole lot of shallow water dividing the place up, so room for water unit play. There are scattered mountains, and you tend to see this construction where you have one mountain, one hill, and one forest a lot. You see that over there. You got kind of a similar construction over here, but doubled. One right there. Mountain and two forests, mountain and hill. So little scattered blobs of mountainous plus hill and forest terrain. You see this a lot in Wesnoth multiplayer maps. Because it kind of means that all the factions that have special terrain dependencies can get at least a little bit of what they need. Like dwarves do really well on mountains and hills, orcs do pretty well on hills, elves of course do very, very well with forests. So by having these little broken up little patches of terrain, everybody gets some of their preferred terrain, but nobody gets a crushing advantage. Like if you had, 4 forests all in a row, then that just gives elves or rebel faction a huge advantage fighting in that region, so map makers tend to try to avoid that. It's a fairly symmetrical map, but not entirely. You'll see this a lot in modern Wesnoth map design too. I believe this game is actually from 2 years ago, but even then, in 2019, this was pretty well established. Whoever goes second gets one village at the start of the game, so they don't have to capture it. They get a little bit of extra income and a little bit of extra upkeep mitigation right at the start, and that offsets the first mover advantage that player 1 otherwise has, which in Wesnoth can be very, very significant. The first mover advantage is a big deal because alpha striking is such a big deal in Wesnoth. Getting the first round of attacks off, getting to pick your targets first, is a huge issue. And so otherwise, if you have a completely symmetrical map, and nobody has any starting villages at the start, the first player has like a 60% win chance, assuming both players are equally skilled. So in any case, let's start this off, shall we? I think I've got the statistics set up properly. Yes, okay. You have to reset these things at the beginning of every replay, otherwise it shows you the statistics from the end of the match. So let's see how things go. We're going to set the view to each team, so we'll swap back and forth teams on the viewpoint. And we will play the turn. So the undead first recruit. Okay, I really need to stop doing that, I guess. Set it to full map view so we can get to see the recruits. Starting recruit: 2 skeletons, a dark adept, and a vampire bat. Krogen's leader is a deathblade. Not sure if he picked that or allowed it to be randomly assigned to him. Probably picked on the latter, I would imagine. Deathblades are good. In multiplayer, they're much better than they are in campaign, because in campaign, you're losing out on a potential level 3 Draugr by going with a Deathblade, but of course, in multiplayer, level 3 units almost never appear. They do have Submerge, so theoretically, he could hide either Deathblades or Skeletons in these little pools of deep water, but I'm not sure he really wants to do that. Deathblades do have a very powerful attack. 8 times 5, and of course they're minus 25% since it is daytime and they are chaotic units. For anyone who hasn't watched a lot of Wesnoth or doesn't know, every unit in Wesnoth has an alignment, and alignments are related to the time of day. So in Wesnoth, the game cycles through times of day. There are 2 turns of day, morning and afternoon. There's a turn of twilight, or dusk, 2 turns of night, first watch and second watch, then there's a turn of dawn, and then you go back to 2 turns of day. Lawful units get a 25% damage bonus during the day. Chaotic units get a 25% damage bonus during the night. Both of those also get 25% penalties at the opposite times of day. So chaotic units are penalized during day. Chaotic units are lawful units, are penalized during night. Neutral units, of which there are some, notably the elves are neutral, have no pluses or minuses at any time of day, and liminal units, which are the Dune folk race, or faction rather, some of them, their units are liminal, have a bonus at dawn and twilight, and in modern Wesnoth, in version 1.16, have no penalties at any time, so they're like lawful but better. Or, sorry, like neutral but better. In this version, this was played on version 1.14 of Wesnoth. In this version, I believe liminal units have a penalty at all times of day except dawn and dusk, and then at dawn and dusk they have no penalty or bonus, which was something that made balancing the Dune folk very, very difficult. I still don't think the Dune folk are perfectly balanced, but we'll see. In any case, that's been a long digression into mechanics, but the point of this is the undead are basically all chaotic, this entire faction, so they all fight a lot better at night. And the Loyalists, this faction, are pretty much all lawful, so they're all better during the daytime, which creates a very strong push-pull dynamic in this matchup. In any case, so starting recruit for the undead, 2 skeletons, a dark adept, so a magical damage dealer, and a vampire bat, so a very fast scout unit. They're saving quite a bit of gold. They're only -1 on net income. Recruit for the Loyalists, a bigger recruit to start off with. They started with 2 spearmen, 2 cavalrymen, and a horseman, so a charging unit. We can look at the horseman here. The horseman is quite a bit different from the cavalryman. The cavalryman has a basic kind of melee attack, but the horseman only has a charge attack, which means that it deals and takes double damage. Its attack is piercing, which means it's not very effective against skeletons, but during the daytime it can still do pretty significant damage. So, undead are advancing, spreading out to take their villages as quickly as possible. Loyalists are doing the same. They're also moving up to this castle to get their recruitment closer to the front. Alright. I'm just going one turn at a time for right now. So, second undead recruit, we've got 2 dark adepts and a skeleton. Looked like a skeleton archer. Yeah, that was a skeleton archer. Okay, so it is now dusk, which means the undead are about to have the advantage. Undead and other chaotic factions like the Northerners, well, really it's just the undead and the Northerners who are chaotic, tend to have a little bit of an advantage early on in games because the first clash comes at night. That said, the first clash is not going to be decisive unless the players really screw up, so it should be fine. We've got a skeleton back here. The entire Loyalist cavalry force has gone to the east of the central mountain, which is largely impassable. It has the statue of Sulla, the great mage, here in the center. Sulla the Just, Sulla the Tyrant, Empress of the Sinking Tower, Lady of the Walking Glacier, Sulla the Incinerator, Sulla the Proud, and Sulla the Righteous. Okay, that's a few different names from a few different cultures, you get the impression. Not sure why Lady of the Walking Glacier. I guess this snow area is her walking glacier. So what we're seeing here is the Loyalists have deployed their leader to the west in order to recruit on the west side, and have a couple of basic infantry spearmen to hold. We can look at their unit description, you can see them. Spearmen are the very basic Loyalist unit. They're not very good at fighting skeletons, but they're quite good at fighting dark adepts, and they're decent at just holding the line, because they're relatively cheap, and they have a decent HP pool. So we've got them over on this side with the leader. The leader here is a white mage. White mages are incredibly good at fighting the undead because they have this arcane magical ranged attack, which does extra damage to most undead units and hits 70% of the time regardless of terrain. Terrain affecting hit chance is one of the primary mechanics of Battle for Wesnoth. In open terrain like this, most units have a 60% chance to hit or be hit. Hills, most units have a 50% chance to be hit. On defensive terrain like towers, like keeps like this, castles, they have a 40% chance to be hit. And then some units have specially good terrain for them, like forests. Elven archers have this quality in forests. Dwarves have it on mountains, where they have only a 30% chance to be hit, so a 70% defense chance on their special terrain. But mostly the highest you get is 60%, which means a 40% to hit roll. Magical attacks always have a 70% to hit roll. So regardless of terrain, they will always hit more than 2 out of 3 shots, which is very, very good. So white mages are extremely good at killing undead units. However, if he loses his white mage leader, he loses the game. Much like if the undead lose their Deathblade leader, they lose the game. So light defensive force on this side, and then most of the power of the Loyalists is actually pushing down this side. They've got these 3 relatively expensive cavalry units, which is interesting. If we can let's look at the point of view right now. So this is what the undead can see, because they are the active player currently. And they can see, they don't know where the enemy leader is. You can probably assume the enemy leader is over here. That's kind of the logical place to be. The only other place to be would be either all the way at the back, which doesn't make a lot of sense, or right over here. But if they were there, you would expect to see some kind of recruited unit in one of these spaces. They do see the cavalry coming up. They don't see the spearmen over on this side yet. So from the undead perspective, since it is dusk, they're about to get their damage bonus, and the enemy is about to get their damage nerf, it really makes sense to start pushing right now. I would imagine he's going to push up on this side, try to occupy this, and see what's going on over here. But let's find out. Yep, so he's pushing up. He sees the spearman, raising another skeleton archer, and then pulling his leader back in an abundance of caution. Okay, so he sees the cavalry up there. He's confirmed the spearmen are here. He still has not confirmed where exactly the enemy leader is. So from the Loyalist side, the Loyalists are actually shifting. They see the undead coming up this way. Let's go back to the full map. So they see the undead coming up this way. And they are shifting their focus over to the right, because that's where all their cavalry was. So they're pulling back, letting the undead push. Basically, they're trying to avoid contact until second watch, so that they don't have to fight under the bad time of day for long, which makes a lot of sense. And yeah, they've actually pushed deep with their cavalry, and they're trying to take extra villages, and they have. It is the undead's turn right now, and the undead only have 7 out of 16 villages. Village imbalances matter a lot more than they initially seem to in Battle for Wesnoth, because villages not only generate gold, but they also control upkeep. So villages in default settings, a village generates, I'm trying to see if I can do this right. So yeah, you can see right here, upkeep costs a certain amount of gold per turn, but every village can support 1 gold worth of units free. So if you have 7 villages, like this one, then you don't pay 7 gold worth of upkeep. Each village also generates 2 gold, so this is saying net income 16. That should be, if you had 8 villages, you should be getting 16, so I'm not sure why it's giving him 16 when he only has 7. Maybe there's a base income of 2 gold. It's honestly been months since I've played Wesnoth, so I don't remember if that's correct, but I would think this would be 14 with 7 villages. Maybe that'll only update at the end of the turn. In any case, the undead are look to be a little bit caught out by this aggressive cavalry play. I can't really blame them. I wouldn't expect this either at this time of day, but let's see what happens. Okay. Yeah, they're pulling back, redistributing. Skeletons have much better defense in cavalry than cavalry in castles, so that they're not scared of that fight at all. And they're pushing up their Dark Adepts. They do now see the enemy leader. So if we look at the undead viewpoint, they can see the leaders over here with relatively light defenses, 3 spearmen. So they might be thinking, okay, it's first watch still. We might be able to just push up our Dark Adepts and drive the White Mage back, like completely out of the way. And yeah, I guess it is 2 base income plus what the villages give you. So that's worth remembering for me. Yeah, because they've got 3 Dark Adepts who hit like trucks at night. Versus a White Mage and 3 Spearmen, and they've got a Vampire Bat and a Skeleton Archer kind of as chaff plus another skeleton archer behind. Then down there, it's like, yeah, they've got these 3 cavalry, but the skeleton has 60% defense in castles. This skeleton can fight as well. Both of them are doing more damage than the cavalry are, since it is nighttime, and they do not take much piercing damage. So you can see they only do, horsemen, for example, even with their ×2 charge bonus, only do 6 damage at the moment to skeletons, because skeletons are very resistant to pierce damage. They resist 60% of pierce damage, 60% of cold damage, and 40% of blade damage. They take a lot of extra damage from arcane attacks, and some extra damage from fire and impact attacks. But yeah, so these guys are just really bad at fighting skeletons, basically. So having 2 melee skeletons over here faced off against these 3 melee cavalry is actually a really good fight for the undead at night. And the Loyalists are pretty much just avoiding that fight. They're stealing villages. They're trying to set things up so that it will be hard to attack their commander, which is smart. So their commander is over here. 1 Dark Adept could get to her, but the others could not. The other Dark Adepts could only attack this castle. And it's now second watch, so they're not going to have the time of day on their side for much longer. So against 3 spearmen, this looked like a decent fight. Against 4 spearmen and 2 cavalry, it doesn't look like a good fight, so I bet these guys are going to pull back. Yep, they're coming back just to kind of punish the cavalry. That cavalry is sort of stuck on the edge of the map now. And we are recruiting a ghost. Okay. Grabbing some villages, and the Dark Adepts are pulling back. Sort of in such a way that they can try to cut off the cavalry if the cavalry runs for it. Stealing a couple of villages just to get some income back, to make sure to maintain income parity, since the cavalry have stolen these 3 villages from them. So far this seems pretty even. Now the Loyalists can see... Yeah, so the undead can see all the cavalry, can see basically all the Loyalist units. They can't really see the leader, but they know she's there. And the Loyalists can also see pretty much all the undead units, including this Dark Adept, who the undead might have thought had gotten out of view. Not sure. Okay, and now the Loyalists are starting to push. They're recruiting a mage, because mages are excellent against skeletons, and it is morning. They didn't want to fight that because they want to tie up this skeleton for as long as possible, so they didn't want to take retaliation damage. This cavalryman is probably in serious trouble, being flanked by skeletons. Even though it's daytime, this skeleton archer can come up here. He doesn't have any ranged attack, so that guy could probably be written off. But this offensive that's coming in right up here... that skeleton's probably doomed. The bat can probably run, but not going to accomplish a great deal. And these Dark Adepts need to book it immediately. Okay, so the ghost is coming over here to attack the cavalryman. That makes a lot of sense, because ghosts are fast enough to chase cavalry, and if a ghost levels up, it turns into something really, really useful. So this is an interesting move. I guess these Dark Adepts do have to move south, so no matter what they do, they're going to be kind of vulnerable, but in his position, I would have been really tempted to take these Dark Adepts and put them up on the hills, where they would have higher defense. When you put a Dark Adept out in open terrain next to a horseman, you are really begging that horseman to try and just kill it. Because if a horseman hits with both of its charge attacks, it will outright kill a Dark Adept in 1 turn. And it's getting on to be daytime, which means this horseman probably isn't very scared of the idea of being flanked by these units. So, I mean, if I were running this horseman, I'd probably move him up here and attack that Dark Adept, right? Because that Dark Adept is in the open. And by being up here, it means these units aren't fast enough to go flank. So, I guess this move was fine, because this move is close enough to be supported, I think. What's his movement points? 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. So this Dark Adept is close enough for revenge to be taken if he's killed. This one, though, is too far away. If it was possible to get him into the hills, that might have been a better choice. Okay. Yeah, and like I said, this cavalryman is doomed. I think he's maybe hoping he can take somebody with him, but he can't. That skeleton is likewise doomed, which is nice. Interesting. Okay, so he's voluntarily taking damage on his commander. Alright, yep, there goes the Dark Adept, wiped out by the cavalry. And we're reclaiming villages, so right now, the Loyalist actually has a 10-6 village advantage. And upkeep is... So, the Undead are paying 2 in upkeep. Yeah, so they have a net income of 12. We can actually look at the stats window right now and see how things are kind of going. We can see that right now the Undead have so far gotten pretty unlucky. They've inflicted 25% less damage than they statistically should have. They've taken almost exactly the amount of damage they should have statistically. They have lost 2 units, 1 Dark Adept and 1 Skeleton Archer. And, yeah, they've recruited mostly Dark Adepts and Skeleton Archers with a scattering of support units, which is kind of what I would expect. Both of those units are powerful ranged attackers that do well against the Loyalist primarily melee contingent. The only units they don't do well against really are mages, and mages are pretty flimsy, so you can kind of just overpower them. Okay, I mentioned the reason that it's good to have ghosts attacking cavalry. So ghosts have a ranged attack, which cavalry don't resist. They're relatively low HP, but they are also highly resistant to blade attacks, 50%, so their HP is actually much more than it looks like. And if they level up, they can level up to wraiths, which are incredibly dangerous because they have slightly more hit points. They have quite a good melee attack, and like a ghost, so the ghost touch attack is weak, but it drains, which means it heals itself for half the damage it deals. When you're a wraith, that attack gets much more powerful. Instead of 4 damage for 3 strikes, it's 6 damage for 4 strikes, and it still drains. Which means that a wraith, if played carefully, is incredibly hard to kill. Still retains all the good resistances, and it's just a real pain in the ass if you can manage to level up a ghost. So, it is morning. The Undead Offensive is going to be coming in pretty soon. We've got a bat flying around stealing villages. Try and get that village parity back. And we're going to be able to take back these villages, so now we're back to village parity. Actually, we're slightly ahead for the Undead. We can look at the stats for the Loyalists. The Loyalists have actually gotten a little bit lucky. They've taken less damage than they should have. They've inflicted the same amount of damage that they should have. They've lost 1 cavalry, killed a Dark Adept, and a Skeleton Archer. So right now, damage-wise, this is going the Loyalists' way. However, financially, the Loyalists are still struggling a little bit. They've got 30 gold in the bank, so they can go back and recruit some stuff. But they've got a bat loose behind them, taking their villages. And this kind of concave, they really don't want to attack into. Even though it's morning, their mage is too far back. The mage won't actually get to the fight until nighttime. These units are not great at fighting skeletons. And they've got a Dark Adept in the mix. So, I don't think... I think as the Loyalists, you want to pull back at this point. Well, maybe I'm wrong. They are going in. I'm not sure. They're trying to kill this Skeleton Archer before it can level up. So, leveling a unit in Wesnoth, leveling any unit can be a game changer, because leveling up fully heals the unit, and it also, of course, increases its abilities. So, for a Skeleton Archer, which has a decent little bow attack and a shitty little melee attack, upgrades to a Bone Shooter, which has more HP, a much more powerful ranged attack, and an actually almost respectable melee attack. And then, of course, if you manage to get up to level 3, then you get a Bane Bow, and Bane Bows are incredibly powerful. But in multiplayer, you almost never go below level 2, or above level 2, rather. That said, a level 2 Bone Shooter is pretty dangerous, especially to Cavalry, which are weak to piercing attacks. Minus 20% versus piercing. So he's trying to kill off this guy before he can level, but I just don't think this attack was a good idea, because he can get so many ranged attackers lined up against these cavalry. It's afternoon. You're not going to have many more turns to do damage. I just don't think this was worth it. Over here, we've got a spearman trying to steal more villages, but he's not going to accomplish much. Okay, Ghost is halfway to leveling. Yep. The cavalry are being forced back. There's just too much firepower. Recruiting more mages. Mages are a decent recruit. They're going to try to go over here and assassinate this Dark Adept, which is a good idea. Dark Adepts are fairly expensive, and they are a lot of firepower for the undead, so you want to kill them whenever you can. And yeah, the cavalry have just pulled back. This little gang is probably going to chase them. That Dark Adept may die, but it's going to take at least one of those units with it. Okay, so looking at the map, let's go to full map view. The Deathblade is heading over here, I think, to start recruiting. We've got a couple more units. We've got this Ghost is really hunting for something to kill to finish off its level 2 upgrade. Likewise, this Skeleton Archer is also halfway to level 2. It really only needs to kill... It either needs to kill 2 more units, or it needs to fight for several rounds and then kill 1. A kill is 8 experience. Every round of fighting is 1 experience, or 2 experience if you're fighting a level 2 unit. So, really, if it fights for 4 rounds... No, not even that. I'm sorry. 8, 19... Yeah, if it fights for 4 rounds and then kills a unit, it'll level up. So that's the goal with this guy. Or, like I said, if he kills 2 guys. The Loyalists are pretty much looking to be on the back foot right now. I mean, they've got their cavalry over here, but their cavalry is injured. Cannot go into fight right now. Really needs to pull back to the villages and heal. They've got some spearmen up there. These 2 units are isolated and about to die. And kind of their only hope is that they can take this Dark Adept with them. This cavalryman could potentially try and run and steal villages down here somewhere, but I don't know, man. Life is looking to be short and bleak for these guys. So far it looks like the undead have been controlling this battle pretty well. That sucks. Missed 3 hits in a row. Did still get the Dark Adept, which is good. But he's kind of putting more units into the trap. I'm not sure how I feel about that, because look at this shit. Like, I mean, I don't think taking these units and trying to make a full court press north would actually work. You wouldn't get there before the time of day changed and the Loyalists recruited a bunch more units and threw you out. But killing these 3 guys? Yeah, absolutely doable. You can just come over here. You've got a Dark Adept in range, you've got a Skeleton in range, you've got the Bat in range to help block. You can bring the Ghost up to sit on that village and be close enough to attack next turn. Bring these Skeleton Archers all over here to this fort. Yeah, these guys are dead. I don't think throwing another unit into that pile was worthwhile. Yep, there goes a horseman with a lot of experience. And other units are pushing north just to establish a border. Okay, the cavalryman is once again running south and putting its back to the wall. I really don't know why we're doing that. I guess he's doing this in a bid to distract enemy units, like to have somebody sent down here to kill him who won't be able to fight for several turns, because this is as far away as you can get from the front line, so a unit will have to come down here, kill him, and then come back. But what gets me is he saw that the ghost was here, and he saw that the ghost was looking for something to kill to level up. So the ghost comes down here and just starts attacking him, and it'll kill him in like probably 3 turns. And if it takes 3 turns killing him, that gives it exactly enough to level up. So why would you do that? I don't know about that move. That seems like it's kind of throwing away the cavalryman. If it was me, I probably would have taken these units and tried to kill this Dark Adept in order to make their, like, sacrifice worthwhile. But, I mean, they're going to die either way, I guess. Doesn't make a huge difference. We've got some Magi coming up here in order to hold the line against these 2 units, which are probing northward, with some skeleton archers in support. Yep, so there goes the ghost. Yep, that's it. And he's down, and now that skeleton is within 1 kill of leveling as well. So this is a big part of the strategy of Wesnoth. Letting your units die means you're giving the other side a whole bunch of experience and getting their units closer to leveling. And when their units level up, you are often in trouble. So once we're scouting with a lot of cavalry, I don't know how I feel about using a lot of cavalry against the undead like this. It seems like they're not accomplishing much. I get the idea. Since they are fast, they can hunt down Dark Adepts. They can get around the lines and kill Dark Adepts pretty quickly in the ideal case, but I don't know. They're weak to piercing damage. They do resist arcane a little bit, I guess, but they're weak to pierce, so skeleton archers wreck them. Their blade attack is not very good against skeletons. Their HP is not exceptional, and they're kind of expensive. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about it. He's been recruiting a lot of cavalry. Like, right now we've got 4 on the board. This is the undead once again. Luck is pretty much leveled out, by the way. We're pretty much even taken inflicted. But the undead have lost quite a bit less in terms of gold than the loyalists have, and it's because the loyalist cavalry keep getting isolated and killed. They've lost 3 cavalry. They're about to lose another one down here in the bottom left. They have killed 2 Dark Adepts, which is good, because killing Dark Adepts is really what you need to do in order to keep the undead contained. But I just don't know how this whole cavalry strat is working out. Okay, so he was making a bid to kill that skeleton this turn. I'm sorry, that cavalryman this turn. Brought a Dark Adept down to help. I don't know, I think I would want to stretch it out one more turn just to level the ghost. And the undead are pulling back to prepare for the morning attack that the loyalists are almost certainly going to bring in. And the loyalists are indeed pushing. They're pushing very hard here on the eastern flank. An attack on Adept, though insignificant, I think. Yeah, so this cavalryman really isn't accomplishing anything. He hit that Adept once, which is a little less than average. He would have expected to hit them twice. But even so, he's only got 12 hit points left. And yeah, I think at this point the Adept moves away. The Ghost just goes right there and, like, uses a weak attack on him, like the Whale attack. Spends one more turn, and then after one more turn, it will kill the Cavalryman and level up into a Wraith. And that will be very, very dangerous. This attack, however, is also very dangerous. So we've got... Well, I take it back. It's not actually that dangerous to the undead position. I don't think. They've got their 2 horsemen back there. Horsemen can do work during the daytime. But they've got 3 cavalrymen, which do not have great damage output. They've got 2 spearmen, which also do not do great damage against skeletons. They're all escorting 2 mages. 2 mages do great damage against everything in the undead roster. So, like, the undead still don't want to fight this during the daytime if they don't have to, but at the same time, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 units ready to flank it, plus a couple more who can come in, including a couple who are close to leveling up. So I think the undead still have the upper hand right now. Oh, that's interesting. So that's an interesting choice. He's giving some experience to his skeleton archer instead of staying there with the ghost. I don't know why, I'll be honest. I guess he's worried about the cavalryman managing to land enough hits to kill the ghost, but the cavalryman can only do a maximum of 12 damage in a round. Yeah, I'm not sure why he did that. I mean, what I think would have been very defensible would be bringing the skeleton archer down, doing the damage, and then if the skeleton archer didn't kill the cavalry, then finishing it off with the ghost. That would put the ghost 1 experience away from leveling up, and then it would go in, have 1 fight with somebody, and level up instantly, like at dusk, so in 2 turns. But okay, that's fine. It's a different leveling strategy than I would have followed. And the undead are gathering their troops in defensive positions to hold against the daytime attack. And if the loyalists push in, it is morning right now. They'll have a couple turns to fight, but they'll be fighting at a terrain disadvantage, and then the tide will turn as nightfall comes. Okay, yep, the skeleton archer finishes off the cavalry. So the loyalists rotate south in an effort to turn the flank, is what's happening here. And they're going after an exposed Dark Adept, but they weren't able to isolate it, so the Dark Adept is just going to pull back. They are going to get this village, but I think the undead are holding on pretty well regardless. Now, the undead are at a village deficit, because they lost that village, they're about to lose that village. So once again, the undead are down on money. But it's okay to be down on money if you're killing a lot more gold worth of the enemy than you're losing. The undead are still being a little bit lucky. They've taken a little bit less damage. You know, comparatively, this ratio is in favor of the undead. And the loyalists have not managed to kill anything in the last couple turns, while the undead have kept picking off cavalry. And they are actually prepping for a counterattack up the western side of the map. While they pull back. Interesting. I think they're trying to trap these guys into occupying this castle, where they can be swarmed from all sides at evening. The loyalists, meanwhile, they still have this cavalry up here, so this side actually isn't as weak as it appears. It's still got 4 units. But most of their firepower is down on this side right now, and not really capable of joining any party that kicks off on that side. So the Loyalists have recruited a Fencer. I actually think this is a really good pick for this matchup, because Fencers, they have blade attacks, which aren't great against skeletons. They don't do a ton of damage, but they have Skirmisher, which means they can ignore enemy zones of control. That means they can very easily penetrate lines in order to attack Dark Adepts, who don't have any blade resist, and also don't have any melee attack. And on top of that, Fencers have really high defenses. So even on flat ground, they have 60%, and on any kind of defensive terrain, they have 70%. And then you see these places where they have 40%. Most normal units have 30 or even 20% defense in all those terrains. So Fencers, despite having low HP, are actually a lot harder to kill than most basic infantry. And on top of that, they're not that expensive, 16, so only 2 gold more than a spearman. So this is a very, very good defensive choice, if that's what you're worried about. But I think, like, the undead are going to start pushing up this way. I don't know what he's going to do with that blob of units. Probably, yeah, pull him back. The offensive is not going to go anywhere in time, and his leader is in danger. So it is time for the undead to resume the offensive, which they do with aplomb. Okay, yep, they caught that spearman. Now this, I don't know why you would do this. I really do not. That's wild. So ghosts have really low HP, right? And they rely on their resistances to not get hit. They don't have great defense either. They're just 50% defense everywhere. So it's all about these incredibly high resistances, right? But they're not resistant to arcane damage. So there's two mages right here that do... Well, they do fire damage, actually, but they're magical attacks. Fire damage, magical attacks. Ghosts only have a 10% resistance to fire. So they're still doing 6 damage a shot, and they have 70% hit chance. Ghosts only have 18 HP. 6 mage shots are going to kill a ghost, even from full health. So this ghost, which would have leveled up with 1 more kill, is going to get destroyed. And, like, they might catch a mage for it, but trading a mage in order to stop a ghost from leveling, like, a mage and a ghost cost the same amount, so it doesn't hurt the loyalists to make that trade. And also, neither of these guys were close to leveling, and this guy was. So, I don't know why you hand that to your opponent at this point. I mean, I think overall, the undead player is playing really well, in terms of kind of controlling the match and making good trades. I think he's been catching the scouting cavalry very effectively. I think he's been doing a lot of good stuff, but this in particular strikes me, just stands out as a blunder to me. Yep, here it comes. There we go, dead. And now all the rest of the Loyalist army runs away. Okay, there goes the fencer. Spending a lot of attacks killing that bat. So the bat does finally die. But they don't manage to get the Dark Adept. Okay, so yeah. So the whole rest of the Loyalist army runs away. That mage is gonna die, but nobody up here is close to leveling, so it's not gonna help them much, and it's an even trade in terms of funds. So the Loyalists are happy to make that trade. Now, they've assembled a lot of cavalry over here. Like, a lot of cavalry. They've got 6 units of cavalry. I think this guy is going to come over to join the ball. They don't have a lot of opposing units facing them. They've got 1 dangerously close to leveling skeleton. And then they've got this skeleton archer. Couple of Dark Adepts, but this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units facing off against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 functionally. Yeah, so they're going to be able to push their way down this side. Interesting. So we're really seeing a rotation of the game state, because the commanders are coming forward on opposite sides. The armies are concentrated on opposite sides. We're about to see a big ol' swing around. Yep, there it goes. So the undead commander kills the offending mage. Skeleton archers come up to deal some damage. Skeletons are still down on villages. Okay, we're gonna try to level the skeleton. There we go. So the skeleton levels to a Revenant, which is just a skeleton plus. Revenants have a better attack, so instead of 7x3, it's 8x4. They have more HP. They have the same resistances. They're just the same unit, but more so. They potentially level up to Draugr, who are, once again, the same, but more so. But more so. Deathblades, which are the unit that the skeleton leader is, are the alternative level from skeletons. They are better than Revenants immediately, but they have less HP, but they do a lot more damage, and they're a little bit faster. But they have no level 3 advancement, so some people prefer Revenants for secondary units, just in case they can potentially level them up again, or just for the extra HP for defensive purposes. Okay, so this is very much turning into a pit fight. That horseman has to run. There aren't any really very safe places to run to. That said, we have the white mage coming in. The white mage is going to do a ton of damage, even at nighttime, to these skeletons. Because that attack still does 10 damage and still has a 70% chance to hit. Interesting choice to make the initial attack against a skeleton archer with the leader, though. I wouldn't think you'd want to do that. Oh, another fencer going in to attack the Dark Adept. Good, so they're going to get to snipe that Dark Adept. They're going to try to snipe this Dark Adept, too, with all the cavalry. And they do it. Okay. So that was a really good attack. It's a shame they are going to lose this horseman, because this horseman is close to leveling but only has 5 HP. But still, they killed a skeleton archer, they killed 2 Dark Adepts. If we look at stats now, now the kills have pretty much leveled out. Once again, the undead are still a little bit lucky. The undead have still taken a little bit less damage than they should have. The ratio is still in their favor. But the undead have now lost 8 units. They've lost 4 Dark Adepts. That's the big thing. And that ghost. And they've killed 7. So at this point, they're losing a lot of their expensive kind of main firepower units. So Dark Adepts cost 16, which isn't super expensive, but is still more expensive than most infantry. They have low HP, they have high damage, and they're magical attacks. So that's what makes them special. But they have no melee. And as we can see, they're very snipeable by these fast units. So this is what the cavalry build was designed to do, and now it's finally working. That said, though, I still don't think the Loyalists are really in charge of this fight. Particularly because, yeah, that. They just lost a couple of horsemen, and horsemen are also expensive. And now they are losing all their villages, because they have committed entirely to this blob strategy over here. This is all their units, except for these 2 up here. All the rest of their units are in this blob. I think at this point the Loyalists have lost. The Loyalists they're a little bit down on villages right now, but they're going to stay down on villages, because the undead are poised to take all of their villages in the north. They can do that faster than the Loyalists can take the undead villages in the south, because the Loyalists are running up against stiffer opposition. This Revenant is going to take some effort to remove. The Bone Shooter can probably take down another cavalry or 2. And yeah, losing those two horsemen in one turn was a pretty painful blow. So if they can clear this turn, which is possible if unlikely, then I think they'll be in okay shape. But they keep taking damage on their leader too, and that's really dangerous, because if you lose that leader, yeah, you can even see over here, balls of steel. Yeah, it really is, because if you lose that guy, you lose the game. So I don't know about using him to clear. Now it is getting on towards morning, so the undead might want to just run at this point. But I still think this is bad for the Loyalists, because they're going to lose a lot of stuff up here in the north. Yeah, see, now it's 10 to 6. Now it's 10 to 6 in terms of villages. And the undead still have a decent defensive position. The Loyalists have money, so if they can get their white mage to that spot and recruit some more units, that could help them. But, oof, very, very dangerous. No, they're trying to level up another bone shooter. They're trying. They're working on it. Okay, looks like the Loyalists are not waiting. They're just gonna press the attack. Okay, they are recruiting, so they recruited 2 more horsemen. Interesting. Alright, so they're trying to suck the undead into bad fights during the daytime. But, I don't know, man. It's already afternoon. They've got their leader right over here with 27 gold in the bank. He's just gonna go back there and recruit some more guys. And they can keep up. They can do this trade. They can fight this because they're getting money and therefore units a lot faster than you are. And you're about to be flanked from the north. Okay, so the leader goes down south to recruit. They set up a little bit of a defensive barricade. They're going to sacrifice that skeleton archer in order to just buy time. And we keep attacking skeleton archers in defensive positions with the mages. And it's like, it's an okay trade, but it's not a great trade. Because the mages do still take damage. Now that was a really good attack. That was very, very good for the Loyalists. But see, now it is evening again. And this is all that's left of the Loyalist cause. The Loyalists have lost fewer units, but a lot more money. Like, you know, it's not a ton more, I guess. It's 18 more gold, which is basically 1 unit's worth. But they've lost an extra unit's worth of money while you're losing 1 unit less. The luck is pretty much evened out, so they had a couple of good turns in there. But, I don't know. I think the undead have just been controlling this better, and the undead now have a lot more resources. All these units are going to move down south. The resistance down here is going to harden up, because this guy is going to be pumping out units. And it's turning into nighttime. I think this is an unwinnable situation, barring some kind of crazy roll of the dice for the Loyalists. Yep, here it comes. There goes some more skeletons to hold the line. The Loyalists are only making 6 gold per turn. They only have 12 bucks in the bank, so they can't recruit anything. Their leader comes forward, scores a kill, but loses some hit points. They are going to fight their way through down south. And they've taken up a defensive position around their white mage, but this is, like, really bad. Because now the undead have 2 turns to just wail on them. With the damage bonus. Yep, and the defensive circle is now compromised. So they can probably kill this bone shooter by bringing in all these units and wrapping around, but their northern flank is about to collapse. Don't do that. Oh, don't do that. Okay, it paid off, but that was a huge gamble. And for some reason, they've left their leader completely exposed to this skeleton archer. Yep, this is how it ends. And that is the game. So, Krogen playing the undead wins, defeats ForPeace playing the Loyalist. We can look at the final stats screen. you can see luck was pretty much even. The undead actually ended up very, very slightly unlucky by the end, but not enough to change anything. Both sides lost the same number of units, but the Loyalist units cost more by actually over 50 gold at the end, although that's counting the White Mage. Can't really count the White Mage. But the Loyalists lost more gold, and the undead made a lot more gold. You can notice here, the undead recruits cost 400 gold altogether, including 14 skeleton archers. They only lost 8 of them, so at the end of the fight, they still had 6 skeleton archers, they still had 3 dark adepts, and yeah, that was most of what they lost. They had an upgraded skeleton archer that they lost as well. So I guess they still had 5 skeleton archers and 3 dark adepts. In any case, very good game, very interesting. I really like Wesnoth. That was a very interesting battle. In particular, I think the moment that really changed it was when the Loyalists committed to the blob strategy over on this side. I think up until then, it was back and forth. It was a little bit in favor of the undead, but still overall fairly even. But I think when the Loyalists formed that death ball and forcibly pushed their way south like that, they really gave up control of their backfield. And the undead coming in and just taking their entire backfield within a couple of turns, while the Loyalists were bogged down killing 1 unit and 2 units at a time, I think that really crippled them. Because after that, I mean, you got down to where the White Mage was in this fort and had enough money to recruit 2 horsemen, and then there was no more money ever. For the rest of the game, the remaining, 4 turns, there was no money, there was no way to come back. So that, I think, was the turning point. I'm not sure what the Loyalist player could have done at that point to change the outcome. I do think, like I said before, I'm just skeptical of this mass cavalry strategy. I mean, maybe if it's played very well, I can see it. In particular, I can see its value because it enables you to punish the undead player's mistakes very, very sharply. Because the cavalry are fast and can get around the line of combat, and hunt down the Dark Adepts. But that said, I think the problem you run into is, what if the undead player doesn't make many positioning mistakes? What if they pretty much protect their Dark Adepts when they need to be protected? Then you end up in the situation that this game we saw show up all the time, where you have 1 cavalryman who's just being chased down and pinned against the edge of the map and killed, and isn't getting any value. And I think that was ultimately one of the things that crippled the Loyalist cause, because they were constantly kind of fighting from behind, where they had the same kind of units on the field overall, but they had a cavalryman over here who was being pinned by a skeleton archer or something. So they're just kind of fighting down, and they're losing money on these units. And then the undead get to kill the unit, and then bring their unit back and have them contribute to the fight a couple turns later, whereas the cavalry is just gone. So, I don't know. What do you think? Let me know what you feel in the comments below. I think as Loyalists, you need to focus more on other units. We can actually pop in here to the Loyalist unit list. I think Fencers are a really good recruit for the Loyalists, because Fencers can pretty much do that same cavalry thing of hunting down Dark Adepts, but they can do it right in the front line. It's often a suicide mission, but it's very doable to just pierce through the front line using Skirmisher, ignoring Zone of Control, to get to a Dark Adept and just kill them. And that's a lot easier, I think, than the wide flanking attacks. Mages, I think, are critically important. He did recruit several mages. I think recruiting more mages is probably a good idea in this matchup, because mages work on every undead unit. The only unit you don't really want to attack with mages is skeleton archers, and that's because even though you win that trade, they do inflict damage, and mages have very little HP. So you don't really want to attack skeleton archers with them, but pretty much any other unit being attacked with mages is good value for you. Beyond that, I think they recruited cavalrymen too heavily. Probably horsemen too heavily. The thing that I didn't see any of, which I was a little bit surprised, was heavy infantry. Particularly once you notice that that an undead player is building a lot of skeleton archers. Heavy infantry are, I think, a really good investment. They are slow, but their maces actually do a little bit of extra damage to skeletons, and they have 40% pierce resistance. So, against skeleton archers, heavy infantry are very nearly a hard counter. Like I said, they're slow, so you have to time your movement very carefully. But if you can get a heavy infantry into base contact with the skeleton archer, you will beat that skeleton archer up. I mean, you only have 2 strikes, and your defenses are low, but 40% resistance to pierce and 38 hit points means skeleton archers just don't do any real damage to heavy infantry. Like, a skeleton archer, even at night, is doing not a lot of damage. Like, let's look at the skeleton archer here real quick. 6 times 3 pierce, so this is 8 times 8 by 3 piercing damage at night. And that means they're doing, with the 40% resistance, I think they're doing 4 damage to heavy infantry. So heavy infantry are taking a maximum of 12 damage on a nighttime turn against a skeleton archer. And they can keep that up for, like, they can take 3 full turns of fire like that and still not be dead. I was just surprised, given how heavily the undead player was building skeleton archers. I was surprised to see no heavy infantry. I would have expected a couple of them. You don't need to recruit a million of them, but 2 or 3 can counter, more than their own number in skeleton archers very handily, and they give you a lot more punch, especially when we're in situations like that blob fight over there. Having a couple heavy infantry mixed in there instead of a couple of those cavalrymen would have been very useful. But in any case, this video's gone on long enough. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, leave a like. If you want to see more, let me know. I will be doing more Wesnoth battle reviews, etc. in the future. In fact, we may do a third Wesnoth tournament sometime coming up. But, I will see y'all in the next one. Take care, everybody.